Okay, so this is chapter 5. Um, and this happens to be actually the center of the book. So we need to know something about ancient Near East literature to understand the significance of chapter 5. Um, Western literature, usually when you want to get to the main point of the story, where do you go in the story? Do you go at the beginning, the end, the middle? Where do you find the main point of an author in Western literature usually? Anybody know? Rudolph, go ahead.
The epilogue at the end.
Okay, very good, right? Usually it's at the end or at the beginning, they announce what they're going to do, right? In Near Eastern literature is the center, right? So the center is usually the place where you will find the key to the whole book, usually. And, you know, these authors like to write in a way that's, you know, kind of enigmatic. So they want us to decipher often what they're trying to say. They're not going to be clear, right? Especially wisdom literature. So we know here that the center of the book is going to be the key to the whole book of Ecclesiastes. If we can understand this passage, chapter 5, we will get it. We will understand the whole book, what he's doing, right? So let's go there and see what is the main theme, right, of this chapter 5. Actually, the chapter, in my view, believes begins a little earlier, right? Because chapter 4 ends with, you know, the famous quote, everything is hevel, futile, right? Pursuit of the wind. This is usually a conclusion, right? He concludes every section with, it's futile, and right? The word hevel, right? It's concluding. So here we start a new section in actually 4 verse. What is that verse, please? 17, right? That's the last verse in chapter 4, correct? Am I reading correctly? Can someone talk to me?
Verse 16.
Minus 16.
Verse 16.
Okay. All right, so yeah. So it reads this, right? Do not be eager to go to the house of God, right? More acceptable is obedience than the offering of fools, for they know nothing, etc. And then keep your mouth from being rash, and let not your throat be quick to bring forth speech. For God is in heaven and you are on earth, and so let your words be few. And then the rest of the passage in that section, before we get into, again, the corruption and so forth, has to do with keeping a control over our mouth. So that's what I want to focus on. This is the center of the book, right? This short passage where he says, when you go to the temple, remember, we're in the mother's house, so we're going to have a criticism of the temple here, for sure, right? And it begins here, when you go to the temple, do not speak and do not offer the sacrifice of fools. Go there to listen rather than to serve, right? That's basically what he's saying. And then there's a whole section on keeping a guard over our mouth, right? So I want to start and look at a few of these ideas. Can you see here some mother's house teachings? Let's see if you can decipher here with regards to the mother's house critique of the temple. What is going on? What is the teaching here? Christo Delou, go ahead.
Right, yeah, he says, listen, which is just another way of saying receive from God.
Perfect. That's the first point, right? This is very typical, right? We, especially in the West, and I think a lot of religions, it's the believer multiplying words, trying to influence the deity, right? When we're praying, here we are, and God this and God that, and you need to understand, and blah. I mean, some of us, when we pray, it's only us speaking for an hour. And even when you go into the synagogue or the church, right, you have written prayers where there's a lot of words, right? You go to a synagogue, it's full of words. You go to a church also, full of words and activity, right? It's bustling with activity. And the Ecclesiastes here is saying, when you go, no words, listen, right? And this is very typical. We're in the wisdom literature, right? And remember that the symbol for wisdom is the ear, right? And so here he's saying here, to a certain degree, we need to shift the way we have been doing religion, the way we have been approaching God. We approach God with our works, with our words. And he's saying, let us approach God in a receptive way rather than in an active way. When we become receptive, a lot of interesting things can begin to happen that we won't get if we're too present, right? So I like that a lot. Very nice. I'll elaborate on that a little more afterwards. Go ahead. What do you have to add?
Kind of going off the idea of like the praying and like all these words being said, like in like the Gospels, I remember Jesus like rebuking the Pharisees, like to saying to them like, do you think God will hear you for your eloquence and like all these prayers that you just throw up as like all vanity, and like, yeah, just kind of going off of that.
Yes, excellent. I was thinking of the same quote after, actually, at the same time. That, yeah, Jesus says, don't multiply. Actually says, when you pray, do not multiply words, but go into secret place and the Lord knows what you want already, right? Something like that. So, of course, Jesus is in the mother's house. We've already established that ahead of time, right? So, very good. So let's think more deeply. What does it mean, a spirituality based on listening versus a spirituality based on talking? How are we as Westerners in a talking spirituality, and how can we begin the shift practically to a receptive spirituality? What would that look like? So yeah, I'm curious. How do we pray? Some of you were saying, and this is actually not very Hebrew, I have to say, because we saw with Job how many words he spoke, right? And we've been learning, right, in the mother's house, how God is interested in our point of view. We need to learn to speak up. We need to find our voice. We need to disagree. We need to challenge, right? So the Hebrews are people of the word, right? So they're people of the book, as the Muslims call them, right? So here Ecclesiastes is introducing something very unusual for a Hebrew, to say, no, it's no more speech. So this means no more challenge, no more confrontation, no more expressing my desires. What kind of communication, what kind of relationship can I have now if I cannot speak, right? That's the question, right, for Hebrew. So Christodoulou and Giannakopoulos.
I'm reminded of the mystical tradition, Sufism in Islam, and maybe the mystical traditions in the other two faiths, that like they meditate on one word or one phrase, and they transcend and they go to where God is. So they say anyway. I mean, that's whatever, but they kind of are receiving whatever is given in that case. Like they're being more receptive and asking for something or praising God. They're meditating on one word.
Yes, I love what you're saying with the mystical tradition, because I think Ecclesiastes here is anticipating this. He is opening up a breach which doesn't exist in the Hebrew religion for a mystical encounter, right? And because in the Hebrew religion, there's actually a criticism of mysticism, right? Because precisely you have to zip it, right? But there's something very interesting that here Ecclesiastes is saying. He's saying, rather than trying to reach God with your words and your actions, why not receive him, his presence, in the silence of your welcoming, right? So he's anticipating on what the Christians eventually will call contemplative prayer or mystical union, right? You cannot receive if you're talking all the time. He's talking here about a way of connecting to God, which is a way of connecting to the presence of God coming down into yourself, right? Versus you trying to go up to him through your words and your actions, right? Do you see the difference between you going up with your words, your requests, your rituals, and God actually coming down, right? I'm reminded of the Tower of Babel, right? They were going up and God came down, right? So this is, in a way, the silence of our souls is a way to attract the presence of God. We don't have to go up. God will come down, right? And so much has been written on this, right? And one of the most amazing Christian writers on this is Simone Weil, right? Contemporary writers, right? And I really suggest you read her text called Waiting for God, right? She really elaborates on the stance that is needed in order for God to come down, right? And it's a stance of surrender, letting be, silence, right? Receptivity. And I think Ecclesiastes, even though he's a Hebrew, and this is really not Hebrew, right? A very un-Hebrew way of thinking, is anticipating the mystical traditions that you will find in the Desert Fathers, in the Sufism. And sadly, right, I'm really sad for Judaism. This was not pursued. The direction that Ecclesiastes is sensing here was not really developed in the Jewish tradition until the 19th century. It's very sad. Giannakopoulos and then Rudolph.
One thing I always remember is that we don't learn when we speak. You know, I mean, I think it was Plato who said, he goes, I know nothing, you know? So if we keep talking like we know something, then we're never going to learn anything. So if we keep trying to talk to God and say, hey, God, I need you to do this, then he's not going to do what actually has to be done for us, because we think we know what's right, but a lot of times it's not what's right. So, and the only way really to learn is to experience and to listen. So if we just keep trying to talk, then we're never actually going to listen.
Excellent, right? Again, this is the wisdom take. So you have the religious take of mysticism that Ecclesiastes seems to be anticipating, but then you have the philosophical state of I don't know, and I will close my mouth and listen and learn rather than talk, right? Again, the symbol of wisdom being the ear, the ability to listen. If you read the book of Proverbs, right, which Solomon also authored, there is a semantic field of listen, 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 right? There's so many repetitions of listen, my son, listen, my son. And of course, this is one of the most famous wisdom texts, right, by Solomon. Also, with regards to hearing, you have the famous, in the Hebrew, Shema Yisrael, the hear, O Israel, your God is one. Again, hear. You have to hear, and to hear, you have to shut up, right? So very good. So I like that. Excellent. Rudolph, you had something to say too?
You all have said it all already. Thank you very much.
So we sink into silence, just,
Regenerating.
Yes. Anybody has anything else to say? Because this is the main, and oh, by the way, yeah, I guess my question would be, as soon as, and then you can answer, Rudolph, maybe. My question would be, why is silence the center of the book of Ecclesiastes? How does this notion of silence connect to everything we've learned so far? I guess that would be my question, because it's the center. So if we understand this notion of receptivity, hearing, not talking, how is it connecting to everything we've done so far? So Bernard and then Rudolph, go ahead.
I mean, I'm not too sure how to, I was going to put my hand back down, but like how to relate it to everything so far. But I just kept thinking of how we've been talking about grasping for things and how much Solomon has. And I was just thinking about in silence, you're not grasping anymore. Like you're finally just letting things happen or allowing yourself to experience. So that was kind of what was like in my mind.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of the beautiful quote by the King David in the Psalms when he says, "Be still and know that I am God," right? It's in our stillness that God can be God, right? So in a way, right, this is kind of where Solomon is going, right? Teaching us surrender, stillness, stop doing so that God can do, right? This is, there's a funny story that I was told when I was very young by a pastor. And I think it applies here very nicely. It was a little girl who had a broken teddy bear, right? The paw was torn off. It's kind of sad. And she came to her, whatever parent. She's like, "Fix my teddy bear," right? And the parent tries to take the teddy bear from her, but she won't let go. And the parent's like, "Let go. I need you to let go if I'm going to be able to fix it." She's like, no. So finally she learns, right? And the lesson being, of course, if we want there to be any type of creative redemption of wherever we are, right, we have to let go. And there are moments in life, I have had moments in life where I was speechless at what was going on. And I just was like, let me just stand here in silence and complete surrender and see what's going to come out of this, right? So this is really, I think, the core message of Ecclesiastes is the only way you will encounter grace is, or gift, is when you learn to release, right? when you fall into silence, inaction. Stop doing so that the creator can begin his or her, right, creative work of redemption, right? So yeah, so I was thinking of that as you were talking, Bernard. Oh, go ahead.
I kind of like that idea, because even like my time that I spend at church and like the things that I see, it's like I see like a lot of, there's this like notion to always like do like something, like create a program to like get everybody involved, and like there's this idea that the more we do, the better, in a sense. But like at the same time, what we lose in that process is like kind of like this this longing to like be with God again, and like I feel like that's like something that I see throughout the years of being at church, like, and it's just really interesting.
Yeah, very good. You're longing for the garden that the temple has taken over, right? So the temple with all of its activities and the doing, and we sometimes long to just, you know, relax, receive, enjoy the presence of God, or, you know, let him do what he needs to do. And we miss that very often in the religious life, right? Where we are so ultra busy, like you're saying, forming new groups and so forth, right? Very good. Bernard is saying, yeah, very good, Bernard. Right? You want to elaborate on that, Bernard? Go ahead.
Yeah, just adding to what he said, like we get, so especially in New York, we get wrapped up in all the things we're able to contribute and what we can do and how hard we work, and that's what we believe makes us worthy, or just that's how we attribute our self-worth. And it's like we don't really talk about the good that comes from just doing things for yourself, just literally just going out or turning something on because you wanted to, you know, just being, just the emphasis of what can happen when you allow yourself to be.
Yeah, excellent. Being versus doing, right? This is where we are. Ecclesiastes is being versus doing. And in a way, COVID, right? This is nice to study this during the times of COVID, but COVID has forced us into the realm of being. For a while, we couldn't do, and we were forced to be. And this was really hard for most of us because we're empty, right? So we had to develop something, right? We had to tap into something that we had never tapped into in order to survive. Excellent. Okay, I have said everything I had to say about this passage. So does anyone else have anything else to say? Because if we don't, then we can just have a nice silent last half hour where we go home. And we can, Christodoulou, go ahead.
I'll be quick. Just yeah, it's a really good reminder. Like even when you go to a temple or church or mosque, like you can see like the people who are kind of preaching the loudest, or like, you know, they're kind of doing or saying it more. They're not listening, and they're not, like, it's a lot of performative. Like I feel like it's inauthentic. Yeah. It's usually like the people who have the most faith are the quiet ones, like that don't do the big show of it.
Yeah, excellent. And in fact, the quality of your speech rests on the quality of your silence, right? If it's to the degree that you know to be silent, that your words will have weight, right? So I like that you're saying that. That makes sense. Giannakopoulos, go ahead.
I wanted to add on
Go ahead.
I wanted to add on what Chrysolis was saying. One thing that Christ says is when you're fasting, is wash your face, brush your teeth, and look good, look strong, so that people don't know you're fasting, so as to not put on a show for others, so that it's only for yourself and for your inner peace. So it's like we don't go around parading that we're fasting, and we don't look ragged or tired. You know, we do our best to look good, you know, whether that's putting on makeup, doing your hair, washing your face, whatever it is, to look like you're not struggling, even though you may really be. So that was one thing I wanted to add.
Right. So the silence of discretion, right? Not putting a spectacle, right? This is a kind of silence. Yeah, I like that. Very good. Rudolph.
Last not least, I do a little exercise with people when I first meet them. I'm in the fortunate situation where every 6 or 8 months or so, I'm meeting new groups of people, 20, 30 people who are involved in the work we do. And one of the exercises I do is that I enter a room and absolutely say nothing. Nobody knows me. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows what I'm doing there, nor am I saying anything. And I guarantee you, it will take about 30 seconds of people not being certain what to do, and then they will turn to each other and have a conversation. And all you need to do is listen. And you learn in the first 10 minutes of meeting a group of new people who likes to speak, who says what, who tells which stories. It's an interesting phenomenon with people. So maybe you have a chance to meet with others you don't know yet and do that exercise. It's a funny thing to do.
What
Where do I fall into that, Rudolph?
Say again?
So where do I fall into that?
Well, I'm pretty sure you have a group of people you haven't met yet, so try it out. You just walk and say anything.
Excellent. Okay, any last words of wisdom on this passage before we conclude? Williams, go ahead.
Oh, like for some reason, like this section specifically just put me off.
Oh.
Because of the fact that like people are so concerned with like it's like you're now having this argument where you're saying we should do self-care, but we also should be concerned with the role of God in our life. And like I feel like it's very very reductive, because a lot of people don't understand that like a lot of the things that we do in especially in modern society are manipulations. So like the reason why we work so hard is because of the product and work ethic that I spoke about earlier. But I feel like it makes me uncomfortable because like it embraces both of these points. Like now we have this issue where we embrace self-care too much as like a command, and it's like interesting that we're hitting both extremes.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, very good. Yeah, it should. The silence is for the possibility of speech, maybe, right? So, but yeah, no, I agree with you, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know if we really understood what true self-care means, right? Because if it's tapping into our being, then we're still far from we're still far from having tapped into that, right? If it's the being versus doing. Self-care can become another doing, right? You can be rushing to yoga class and then going to this party and then, going to this. So I don't know if we've really learned, even with our emphasis on self-care, how to tap into our being. Bernard. Yes, self-care is a new fad now. Very good. Okay, I think we can conclude because anyways, it's a text on silence, so we can have a minute of silence at home. Don't have to say too much about this. Next time you read the whole book, finish the book for me. We're going to finish it tomorrow. So from chapter 6 to 12. You finish the book and we will be done. And then you'll have your test. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.